Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Benoit Glaser and I'm the Artistic Director of the Timucua Arts Foundation. This video is about mixing a show at Timucua. We're nearing 1,000 shows here in our history and all of them are different. So, of course, last night we had Dimas Sánchez play and it was no exception. So, as usual, we did a sound check, and after the sound check, I invited the musicians to listen to. I record little bits of the sound check to make sure that everybody's happy. And David told me that he likes to have the room mics on. It softens his saxophone sound a little bit. So a couple of things. First, that I didn't have time before the first show to move those room mics a little bit closer. So I did that in between shows. So there's going to be a slight difference in the level of those mics and the timing of it. So the first thing I needed to do was to line up. So here I have my main, I call it the main, so it's the main pair. So it's the room mics. And, they're mixed a little bit lower, but I need to line them up. So I found, a snare crack to be sure that, that's what basically leaks the most in, or it's picked up the most by those mics. So I want to make sure that that lines up with the drum mics so that I don't get phasing or timing issues. So I did that for both the first show and the second show separately, of course. You can see here that's the first show, that's the second show. I put a marker, number 1, number 2. And then of course the timing is different because I moved the mics in between shows. So that's the first thing I did. And then the second thing, here's Dimas. So we had a couple of special things about that show is that David plays mostly saxophone, but he also plays a little bit of percussion. So that's his percussion track right here. He doesn't play a lot of that. And at first I thought there was going to be a cajon and there was no cajon. So the mic placement was a little bit odd. But so I don't want to hear that mic except when he's playing percussion. So I did that. I cleaned that up. Same thing for Dimas. Dimas is David's brother and he's a percussionist, and he had a setup. And he didn't play every song. He played on a few songs. So these are the songs that Dimas played. And David actually sat at Dimas' station and played for a little bit. So that's what this little thing here is here. So I also cleaned up the saxophone because obviously when David is playing percussion, he's not playing saxophone. And so what I did in the first set is I mostly turned down about 15 dBs his saxophone mic when it was not in use. And basically because I didn't want to completely alter the sound field when I don't want to shut it down unless it's a very long period. So the second set, there are a few instances where I actually kill the saxophone mic completely because there's a long, there's a piano solo, a bass solo, and then a drum solo or whatever, and for like 10 minutes he's not playing saxophone, so that's fine. And I'm very careful about how I fade out and fade back into it so that it's natural and doesn't alter the sound of the drums, especially because that's what happens. That usually the drums it'll change the way the drums sound. So that's about it. What happens during the show is I mix. I have my little control surface here and I mix live. So I do these things, this kind of cleanup organically as the show happens. But because David wanted the room mics, so that I couldn't change the timing live. So that's why I had to mix in post. And so basically now the mix is pretty much done. Like I'm not changing the bass levels a lot, the piano levels at all actually, or even the saxophone levels barely at all. The only thing is David uses his own microphone, and it's a fixed microphone on a stand. It's a Neumann 170, which is a good microphone, but he does move quite a bit, and so I had to adjust in a few instances, but I try not to do that too much because it changes how all the other instruments sound when you do that. If he backs up and I boost it by 6 dB, I'm also boosting the leak of the drums and the piano and the bass and that mic by 6 dB, and so it changes the way everything sounds. So of course my saving grace here is that this is all for video, so you can see that he's backing off the mic on the video, and so your brain adjusts and knows that, you know, where the saxophone is supposed to go in the mix. So essentially what I'm doing is not really mixing or spending a lot of time mixing. I'm just cleaning some things out, make sure the timings are correct. And then also, like, for example, this is the public address microphone, and that's barely used at all. And he turned it off, but you know what I do is I actually trim that a little bit just because the handling noise before he switches it off. So I want to get rid of that, so I do. And so it's just basic editing stuff. So nothing complicated. My setup, if you can, you know, see now, that's my tracking setup. When I'm tracking live, that's what I use because I'm mostly concerned about levels. I've done my, you know, any kind of very little EQing and all that kind of stuff during sound check, and so I'm basically concerned about levels during the show, and so I do that live. And then for editing, I just, you know, I have a macro here. I use Reaper, by the way. Very organic, very intuitive, and very good sounding. It outsounds most other DAWs, and I think it's because the way it's programmed. It's a much more compact program than most. It's very well done. I really like it because of that. So that's it. So basically what I'm going to do now is I'm going to listen to some of the stuff. That's going to sound very weird on the microphone. But at the end I'm going to tag the trailers. It's going to be like a 1 minute video so that you can hear what the result sounds like. At least in AAC I use as high a bit rate as I can, but it's still AAC for YouTube. But that's life. That's what we have to live with. So that's what things sound like. I'm not super pleased with the reverb I'm using right now, or the way I'm using it. So I have some work. I had to change all my plugins recently because I changed the computer. I'm now using a Mac Mini M1, and so few plugins are compatible with that, or were when I built this a few months ago. And I used to use Altiverb as a reverb, or east-west spaces, depending on the context. And now I'm using Convology, so it's a different reverb, and I'm still getting used to that. So I'm not 100% pleased. I only used that reverb when I close my things, which is about half my projects. The other half is only the room mics, and because of the ACS system, the acoustic control or variable acoustic systems we have in the room, I don't use any reverb at all. The reverb is I mean, the room is the room, and I pick up the room, and that's all it is. So and it sounds fabulous, by the way. Basically, my setup is based on CraneSong Spiders. I have 2 of them, so I have 16 channels of pure Class A bliss. And then my DAC is a Mytek Manhattan, and then I use my mics like in the piano, and my room mics are mostly DPA mics. In this case, the saxophone mic, I would have preferred personally my DPA 4037. It's an Omni, and I put it on the bell, but not in the bell. I put it like, you know, close to the left hand, a little bit like in between the bell and the left hand. It's a very flat sounding, natural sounding microphone, and very even sounding from the top to the bottom with that setup. And I like it because of that, and also it's more reflective of the actual dynamics that the musicians are using, as opposed to their geographical location on stage in relation to the fixed mic. I have my own way of miking the drums, so it's just 2 overheads and a kick mic. It's a dynamic kick mic, and then 2 condensers in a modified ORTF setup for the overheads. But the key here is that they are equidistant from the snare drum, and so that prevents timing issues in the leak in the kick drum microphone. And then that's it. I picked up, in this case, he played electric bass, so I picked that up direct with the Radial DI. And I have the acoustic bass. I have my own microphone set up. It's a dynamic mic. It's a Sennheiser E604, I believe. I basically skeletonized it and made it so that it'd be lightweight, and I use a DPA clip, and I clip it right on the bass, and it's a wonderful mic that doesn't leak too much. So that's that. Enjoy the trailer coming up in a second.